Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today, we are going way back in time.
Way back.
Yeah, like way back to ancient Mesopotamia to learn about the
Suddenly.
Sumerian civilization.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be using excerpts from Sumerians.pdf as our main source material for this one.
This is good.
So get this.
Okay.
They invented the base 60 system that we still use today for telling time.
Wow, really?
I know, right? So like next time you check your watch,
Uh-huh.
thank a Sumerian.
I will.
It's pretty amazing how this civilization that was pretty much lost to history
Right.
was like resurrected through archaeology starting in like the 1800s.
Yeah, it's really incredible to think about how they were just kind of waiting there
Right.
to be rediscovered. Yeah.
Like buried treasure.
Yeah, exactly, like buried treasure.
Our source material talks about all these early European travelers who came across these incredible Mesopotamian ruins, and they were trying to fit them into a biblical context.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine, like, trying to decipher these structures with only the Bible as your reference point?
I mean, it must led to some pretty wild interpretations.
Oh, it totally did.
I bet.
Like, for example, there was this one mistranslated inscription on a boundary stone that was actually a warning against tampering with it. But they thought it said something about the army of heaven, like watering us with vinegar.
For healing.
Yeah, for healing.
A vinegar shower. That's an interesting interpretation.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thankfully, we moved beyond those biblical interpretations.
Right.
Thanks to people like Karsten Niebuhr, who did all these amazing sketches of Nineveh,
Oh, cool.
and Abby Beauchamp, who did what is believed to be the very first archaeological dig in Mesopotamia.
Wow, the very first one.
I know. And he uncovered the Lion of Babylon sculpture.
That's amazing.
I know, it's pretty cool. So those were like the first steps towards really understanding this ancient civilization.
Yeah, definitely. And then came like the real turning point with the discovery of these trilingual inscriptions in Iran.
Oh yeah, like those giant Rosetta Stones.
Exactly. They basically unlocked the secrets of Akkadian,
Mm-hmm.
which was the language used in so many Mesopotamian texts.
So it was like a domino effect. Decoding one language led to understanding another?
Exactly. These inscriptions found in Persepolis were a linguistic treasure trove.
That's a great way to put it.
You know, by comparing the known languages on the inscriptions to the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
scholars like Francois Thoreau-Dinguin and Arnaud Pobel, they figured out Akkadian.
Wow.
And that paved the way for deciphering Sumerian itself.
Incredible.
And then the story gets even more exciting.
I'm ready.
Okay, so for example, the excavations at Lagash and Nippur, they uncovered all kinds of artifacts.
Like what?
Okay, so there was the Stele of the Vultures,
Okay.
which depicts a king leading his army to victory.
Mm.
And these incredibly detailed sculptures like the head of Ur-Nammu and Gudea,
Wow.
who was the Ensis of Lagash.
Cool. But weren't there like tons of clay tablets found too?
Oh yeah, thousands of them.
Wow. What did they say?
Well, they weren't just doodles or anything.
Okay,
They
good.
had court decisions, contracts, literary works.
So it's like we're getting a direct glimpse into their daily lives?
Exactly. It's like time capsules, you know?
Yeah.
Like imagine holding a clay tablet from 5,000 years ago
Wow.
and reading about a legal dispute over a sheep.
That's pretty amazing.
No, right?
And it wasn't just like everyday stuff either, right?
Right.
Like I read that one inscription mentions rulers coming from all these far-off lands.
Oh, yeah?
Like Cedar Mountain in Elam to celebrate a temple dedication in Adab.
Yeah, that's right.
It makes you wonder about their political landscape, right? Like how vast and interconnected it must have been.
Absolutely. These inscriptions really paint a vivid picture of Sumerian politics.
Like, what do we see?
Well, it's a world of ambition, alliances, and power struggles.
It sounds intense.
Yeah, it was, for sure.
Yeah.
We see the rise of powerful rulers like Lugalanamundu, who united huge chunks of territory under his rule.
So he was like a unifier.
Yeah, you could say that. He basically set the stage for what we know as Sumerian civilization.
But wouldn't a civilization built on conquest be kind of inherently unstable?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And holding such a vast territory together definitely wasn't easy.
Right?
And we see this play out with rulers like Naram Sen,
Okay.
who was Lugalanamundu's grandson.
Mm.
He declared himself king of the four quarters.
Oh.
And he even had himself deified.
Deified. That's next level.
Yeah, talk about an ego trip.
Curiously.
But as we see throughout history, that kind of hubris can lead to a downfall.
Oh, I bet.
Naram-Sen's reign ended in collapse.
How?
Well, a group called the Gutians, they came in and disrupted the whole power structure.
So even the mightiest empires are vulnerable.
Exactly. It's like a constant cycle of rise and fall, ambition and vulnerability.
Makes you think.
It does. So how do you think the everyday Sumerians navigated this turbulent world?
It must have been tough.
Yeah, well, the source material suggests they had a very structured society.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was based on a city-state system.
Okay, so like a network of independent cities.
Exactly. Each with its own ruler and government, all coexisting within the larger Sumerian civilization.
I see.
And within these city-states, you had commoners, nobles, priests,
Uh-huh.
each playing their specific role.
So this structure probably gave them a sense of stability amidst all the chaos.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's incredible how these ancient societies created such complex systems.
I know, right? It's amazing.
Oh.
And speaking of complex systems, let's talk about their legal system.
Okay.
The Sumerians are credited with one of the earliest known law codes, the Code of Urnamo.
Wow.
And this code wasn't just a list of rules.
Right.
It gives us incredible insights into how justice was served back then.
Really?
Yeah, it covered everything from theft and adultery to inheritance and debt, even provisions for the treatment of slaves.
Wow. So it's like peering into the legal minds of a civilization from 5,000 years ago.
Exactly.
The Code of Urnamo sounds like a fascinating read.
It is.
But, with their emphasis on oaths and divine judgment,
Right.
did their legal system actually prioritize finding the truth, or was it more about appeasing the gods?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, they had this concept of conditional verdicts.
What's that?
So basically, the accused had to swear an oath before the gods
Uh-huh.
to prove their innocence.
Oh, wow.
So imagine standing in a temple
Okay.
and invoking the wrath of the gods if you were lying.
That's intense.
Yeah. And the consequences weren't just earthly punishment.
Hmm?
They believed it would affect you eternally.
So their legal system was deeply connected to their religious beliefs.
Absolutely.
But those oaths, wouldn't that put a lot of pressure on people?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's like it could even lead to false confessions, right?
Definitely a possibility. And the punishments themselves are pretty harsh.
Like what?
Well, you could be stoned for theft
Wow.
or have your teeth crushed with bricks for slander.
Ouch.
Yeah. It paints a picture of a society that valued order and justice. But their idea of fairness was very different from ours.
Right.
So, yeah.
And this focus on practicality seems to have extended to their math, too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, remember that base 60 system we talked about earlier?
Uh-huh.
It all goes back to them?
That's right. They didn't just use it for timekeeping either.
No?
Nope. They also applied it to measurements of area and volume.
Really?
Yeah, and get this. One clay tablet actually contains a table for calculating the area of square fields.
Wow, so they were using practical math thousands of years ago.
I know, it's amazing.
Oh.
It shows just how much they needed precise measurements for agriculture and construction.
It's like they had a system for everything.
They really did. From law and order to measuring their fields.
Speaking of systems, though, let's move on to their medicine.
Okay.
This is where things get a little interesting.
Little.
Their approach to medicine was heavily influenced by their belief in the supernatural right.
Yeah, they attributed illnesses to demons and evil spirits. Yeah, so their treatments combined practical remedies with magical rituals.
Interesting. So do you think they focused more on appeasing the spirits than actually treating the root cause of the illness?
That's a good question to consider.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. And the source material mentions some pretty unusual ingredients in their prescriptions.
Like what?
Well, things like crushed turtle shells,
Mm.
dried snakes,
Hmm.
even the lees of beer.
As a cure.
Yeah.
Wow, makes you appreciate modern medicine.
Oh, yeah.
But, even with those unconventional methods, it's clear they were trying to understand and treat illness.
Right.
It shows their ingenuity and desire to make their lives better.
Exactly.
And speaking of improving their lives, let's not forget about their craftsmanship.
Oh, yeah.
Despite their lack of natural resources, they were such skilled artisans.
It's true.
They worked with gold, silver, copper, bronze.
Imagine the skill it took to create such intricate pieces back then.
Yeah, with the tools they had.
And we have a tablet that actually lists the work completed in the temple workshops during a single year.
Oh, wow. So it's like a snapshot of Sumerian artisans in action.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fascinating.
So we've got metal workers, leather workers, carpenters, jewelers.
Yeah.
They really produced everything.
Yeah, from weapons and tools to jewelry and religious artifacts.
It's pretty remarkable.
It is. But, surviving in ancient Mesopotamia took more than just craftsmanship.
Right, they needed to eat.
Exactly. They needed to master agriculture to thrive in their environment.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and they did. They developed these complex irrigation systems
Mm-hmm.
and farming techniques.
So they were like ancient hydro engineers.
Yeah, basically. They became pioneers in water management.
That's so cool. And it was crucial for their survival in a region where rainfall was unpredictable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, our source mentions this farmer's almanac that they had written on clay tablets, and it had instructions for everything.
Really?
Yeah, from irrigation and planting to pest control.
Wow, that's amazing. It's incredible how they documented and shared this knowledge.
Yeah, it really shows their understanding of the natural world
Right.
and their desire to ensure everyone had enough food.
So we've seen their practical side,
Uh-huh.
their innovation, their complex systems,
Right.
but no discussion of the Sumerians would be complete without talking about their religious beliefs.
Oh, definitely. They had a very unique cosmology.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so imagine this. A flat Earth enclosed by a solid dome, surrounded by a boundless sea.
Wow. It's a bit different from how we see the universe today.
You can say that again.
Yeah.
But it shows how they tried to make sense of the world around them.
I see.
And within this universe, they had a whole pantheon of gods.
Yeah, tell me about the Sumerian gods.
Okay, so their pantheon was huge and complex,
Right.
with deities like Enlil, Enki, and Ninhursag,
Uh-huh.
each with their own specific roles and responsibilities.
And what were they like?
Well, the fascinating thing is that these gods weren't just these distant, abstract beings.
Oh.
The myths portray them with very human-like qualities.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they feast, they marry, they fight, they even experience emotions just like us.
So not just lightning bolts and pronouncements from on high.
Nope. These gods had personalities, flaws, even relationship drama.
Sounds a bit like a divine soap opera.
You could see that.
So that anthropomorphic view of the divine,
Right.
that's a key characteristic of Sumerian religion.
Yeah, it made the gods more relatable,
Mhm.
allowing people to connect with them on a personal level.
I can see that, but it also made them unpredictable,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
capable of great acts of creation and destruction.
Exactly.
And this human-like quality extended to their idea of a personal god, too, right?
Right. Each individual had their own personal deity who acted as their advocate.
Like their own personal lawyer in the divine realm.
Precisely. Advocating for their needs and protecting their interests.
It really highlights the importance of having a good relationship with your personal god.
Oh, yeah, through prayers, offerings, proper conduct. It makes you wonder how they chose their personal god.
Yeah, how did they?
I don't know. Was it family lineage, profession, or personal preference?
It's a good question.
It is. And it seems even the gods had to play by certain rules.
What do you mean?
Well, there's one myth where the water god Enki needed Enlil's approval for his sea house.
So even the gods needed permission slips.
It seems so.
That's pretty funny.
It is. It adds a whole other layer of complexity to their religious system.
Right.
Yeah, suggesting a hierarchy even among the divine.
Fascinating.
And this whole interplay between gods and humans,
Uh-huh.
it's explored even further in their literature.
Oh, yeah, their literature goes way beyond just myths and prayers, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Sumerians had this diverse body of literature.
Like what?
Well, they had wisdom sayings, proverbs, epic tales, lamentations.
And through all of these, we get a deeper understanding of their worldview.
Definitely. Their values, their perspective on life.
It's like these texts are windows into the Sumerian mind.
Exactly.
So let's dive into some of those literary works next.
Oh.
They're like portals to another world.
Let's go.
So we were talking about Sumerian literature and how diverse it is.
Right.
You called it like a portal into the Sumerian mind.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin with all this?
Well, a good place to start would be with the instructions of Shurupak.
All right.
Think of it as like an ancient self-help guide.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a collection of wisdom sayings and proverbs meant to guide people through life's challenges.
So like a Sumerian Dear Abby.
Yeah, something like that.
What kind of advice did this Shurupak give?
Oh, he covered a wide range of topics.
Like what?
Well, practical things like managing your household,
Huh?
respecting your elders,
Okay.
and then also more philosophical reflections on life, death, and the nature of the gods.
It sounds pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, it really is. One proverb that I found really interesting was, "Possessions are sparrows in flight, which can find no place to alight."
Wow, that's a beautiful image. It's a reminder that material things are temporary.
Right.
It's fascinating how these ancient proverbs can still resonate with us today.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like,
Right.
Even though we live in such a different time with
Yeah.
all our technology and advancements,
Yeah.
we still grapple with the same fundamental questions about life, purpose, and happiness.
It's a testament to the enduring power of the human experience, I think.
Absolutely. And the Sumerians, through their literature, they give us a glimpse into how they navigated those challenges.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're saying, hey, we've been there. We get it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So besides those nuggets of wisdom, what other kinds of literature did they write?
Well, our source mentioned something called disputation literature.
Okay, disputation literature. What's that?
So basically, imagine poems that stage debates or contests between two opposing forces or concepts.
Oh, interesting. So like a war of words.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah,
Like a verbal battle royale where each side argues for its superiority.
I like that. A verbal battle royale.
Okay, so what kind of topics did they debate?
Well, it could get pretty philosophical.
Right.
For example, there's one called The Dispute Between Summer and Winter,
Okay.
where each season argues about why it's more essential for the world.
So like a nature documentary, but with the seasons as narrators.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then there's the dispute between cattle and grain,
Okay.
where they each claim to be more crucial for human survival.
Wow. So it wasn't just abstract ideas. They were debating things that were actually important to their lives.
Right. It makes you wonder if these disputes reflected real tensions in Sumerian society.
That's a great point. So who usually won these disputes?
Well, sometimes it's left open-ended, forcing the audience to think about the arguments.
Okay.
But often a divine judge like Enlil steps in to declare a winner.
So like a cosmic court case.
Yeah, pretty much. For instance, in the dispute between cattle and grain, Enlil ultimately sides with grain.
Really?
Yep. He declares it the foundation of civilization. Well, that makes sense given their reliance on agriculture.
Right.
It's interesting how they use these disputes to kind of legitimize their societal priorities.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the Lamentations.
Oh, yes, the Lamentations. What can you tell us about those?
Well, Lamentations are powerful expressions of grief and loss. They're often written in response to the destruction of cities, either by war or natural disasters.
So they give us insight into the emotional lives of the Sumerians.
Exactly. They reveal their vulnerability and their deep sense of loss.
We talked earlier about the Lamentations for and the lines about possessions being scattered like locusts.
Yeah, those are powerful images.
It really gives you a sense of the devastation and despair they must have felt.
Definitely.
Right.
But these lamentations weren't just about expressing sorrow.
Okay.
They also contain reflections on the nature of the gods, the fragility of human life, and the cyclical patterns of history.
So they understood that even great civilizations were vulnerable.
They did. They knew that human existence was precarious.
But with their belief in a gloomy afterlife, wouldn't this awareness of life's fragility lead to a sense of hopelessness?
That's a good question. But maybe it was the opposite. Maybe this awareness actually fueled their drive to create a lasting legacy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like they were saying, our time is limited, so let's make the most of it. Let's build, create, and explore.
So it wasn't about denying death, but embracing life in all its complexity.
Exactly. And I think this resilient spirit extended to their approach to innovation and technology, too.
Definitely. Like their irrigation systems were so advanced for their time.
Oh, yeah, they were masters of manipulating their environment to survive.
And remember that farmer's almanac on clay tablets?
Huh.
It's amazing how they documented all that knowledge.
I know, it's like they wanted to ensure agricultural success for generations to come.
It shows their deep understanding of the natural world and their commitment to their community.
Yeah, I agree. But beyond agriculture, their craftsmanship also showcased their skill and innovation.
Right. We've talked about their metalwork, but didn't they also excel in carpentry and textiles?
Oh yeah, they were truly multi-talented. Their work was incredible.
And they didn't just create functional objects either.
No, they produced beautiful art, intricate jewelry, and elaborate religious artifacts.
It's like they were saying, we might not have much, but we're going to make the most of it.
I love that.
Huh?
And their impact wasn't limited to their immediate surroundings either.
Oh, right. They had extensive trade networks.
Exactly. Their trade routes stretched across the ancient Near East,
Wow.
reaching as far as Iran, India, and even the Arabian Peninsula.
So even in ancient times, the world was more interconnected than we might think.
Yeah, definitely. And they weren't just trading goods either.
Ah.
Their cuneiform writing system spread far and wide, influencing writing in other cultures.
So their ideas were traveling too.
Exactly. And their literary traditions, especially the Epic of Gilgamesh, have resonated throughout history.
It's amazing how they planted these seeds of knowledge and creativity.
It really is. And speaking of connections, what about that theory connecting the Sumerians to the biblical narrative.
Oh, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's definitely a thought-provoking idea.
It is.
While a direct genealogical link between the Sumerians and the Hebrew people is debated,
Right.
there are definitely some interesting parallels between their cultures and stories. And the possible linguistic connections between Sumerian words and biblical names are fascinating.
For example.
Well, the biblical city of Ur is actually Urim in Sumerian.
Huh. That's interesting.
It's like a linguistic puzzle with clues scattered throughout both cultures.
I like that. But even if there isn't a direct historical connection,
Yeah,
it highlights the shared human experience that transcends time and geography.
absolutely. And the Sumerians, with their rich and complex culture, offer us a unique window into that shared experience.
They were innovators, artists, storytellers, and survivors.
And even though they lived thousands of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
their stories can still move us to challenge us and inspire us.
It's like they were a civilization that truly embraced life's complexities with all its joys and sorrows.
Yeah, and they remind us that even in the face of challenges, we have the capacity for resilience, creativity, and connection.
Their legacy is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we left off talking about how Sumerian literature can give us a glimpse into their worldview.
Right, like a portal.
Yeah, exactly. So let's jump into some specific examples.
Okay, sounds good.
You mentioned the instructions of Shurpak earlier.
Yeah.
What was that all about again?
Well, it's like a collection of wisdom sayings and proverbs, almost like an ancient self-help guide.
Okay, so like a Sumerian chicken soup for the soul?
Haha, yeah, something like that.
What kind of advice did this Shurpak give?
He covered a lot of ground.
Like what?
Well, practical things like managing your household, respecting your elders, but also deeper reflections on life and death and the nature of the gods.
Sounds pretty comprehensive.
It is.
Do you have a favorite proverb?
Oh, there's one that always stuck with me. It goes, "Possessions are sparrows in flight, which can find no place to alight."
Wow, that's a beautiful image. It really emphasizes the fleeting nature of material possessions.
Right.
It's amazing how these ancient proverbs can still speak to us today,
I know, it's really powerful.
even though we live in such a different world.
Totally. It makes you wonder, though,
What's that?
in a society that valued achievement and status so much,
Yeah.
did these proverbs offer a kind of counterbalance?
Hmm.
A reminder that true fulfillment comes from somewhere else?
That's a really interesting thought.
It is, isn't it?
It seems the Sumerians understood that we need both material and spiritual fulfillment.
Yeah, and their proverbs often emphasize humility, honesty, and strong relationships.
It's a reminder that some things about human nature just never change.
Exactly. But, the Sumerians weren't all about sage advice and proverbs.
Oh, right. They loved a good debate, too.
Yeah, exactly. Remember that disputation literature we mentioned earlier?
Oh, yeah, those poetic battles. What were those all about again?
So picture this. Poems that pit two opposing forces or concepts against each other,
Okay.
each side arguing for his own superiority.
It's like those epic rap battles you see online.
Haha. Yeah, kind of. But with much deeper themes.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, there's this one called The Dispute Between Summer and Winter.
Okay.
Each season basically boasts about its benefits and claims to be more important for the world.
So like a nature documentary, but narrated by the seasons themselves.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly.
What else?
There's also the dispute between cattle and grain.
Hmm.
They each argue about their importance for human survival.
It's interesting that they've focused on nature and agriculture in these debates.
Yeah, it really highlights how closely their lives were intertwined with the land and the cycles of nature.
So these disputes weren't just abstract ideas, they were connected to real-life concerns.
Right. And while they might seem lighthearted on the surface,
Mm-hmm.
they often touched on deeper social and economic issues.
So they were using poetry to explore societal values and dilemmas.
Exactly.
Did these disputes always have a clear winner?
Sometimes the outcome was ambiguous,
Okay.
leaving the audience to ponder the arguments.
Makes sense.
But often, a divine judge, usually Enlil, would step in and declare a victor.
It's like a cosmic court case with the fate of entire concepts at stake.
I love that image.
It's fascinating how they brought their religious beliefs into these intellectual debates.
Definitely. But amidst all these explorations of wisdom and philosophy,
Yeah.
the Sumerians didn't shy away from the tougher parts of life.
Right, like death and loss.
Exactly. Tell me, what do you remember about the Lamentations?
The Lamentations are those poems mourning the destruction of cities, right?
Yeah,
Like the ones for Ur. They
Yeah.
were filled with such raw emotion.
they were, weren't they?
You could really feel the weight of their sorrow.
It's incredible how these texts can still evoke such strong feelings in us.
It really is.
The Lamentations describe the loss of loved ones, the destruction of homes and temples, the scattering of possessions.
It's a powerful reminder that even in ancient times, people experienced the same pain and loss we do.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And given their belief in a gloomy afterlife,
Right.
it's interesting that their lamentations weren't just expressions of despair.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Well, I think they also reveal a deep reverence for life, a recognition that even in the face of death, life is precious.
So it's like by acknowledging their loss, they were also affirming the value of what they had lost.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful thought. And even though the Lamentations are about such sad topics, they actually remind us of the resilience of the human spirit.
I agree. Our ability to grieve, to heal, to find meaning, even in tragedy.
And there's also a subtle thread of hope running through them, right?
Yeah, that belief in the cyclical nature of things, that destruction can pave the way for renewal.
That even from ashes, something new can emerge.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It is. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Sumerian civilization, what are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to remember?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the Sumerians were more than just an ancient civilization.
Okay.
They were innovators, thinkers, artists, and survivors. They laid the foundation for so many things we take for granted today.
Right.
From writing and math to law and governance.
But maybe even more importantly, they remind us of the power of the human spirit.
Exactly. Our capacity for creativity, resilience, and connection.
They were a civilization that embraced both the practical and the spiritual, the worldly and the otherworldly.
And their stories offer us valuable insights into the human experience.
Reminding us of our shared hopes, fears, and dreams.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we say goodbye to the world of the Sumerians, what's one thing you'd like our listeners to ponder?
I'd encourage them to consider the impact of the Sumerians on their own lives.
How so?
Well, think about it. From the way we tell time to the foundations of our legal systems, their influence is all around us.
I never thought about it like that.
It's a reminder that we're all part of this larger human story.
A story that stretches back thousands of years.
And connects us to those who came before us.
Wow. It's been an incredible journey exploring the world of the Sumerians.
It has.
Their story shows us that even ancient civilizations have so much to teach us.
They really do.
About ourselves and the world we live in.
Absolutely.
So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of history.
I'll second that.
And until next time, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Bye, everyone.